Before we dive into today's story, if this is your first time watching one of our videos, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us and helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Stick with us till the very end. And if this story moves you, share your thoughts in the comments and send it to a friend who needs to hear it. Now, let's begin. Claire Dawson stood in the middle of the glowing backyard, the air filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the scent of roses threaded along white string lights. It was Vanessa's engagement party, her sister's night, her perfect display. Claire had arrived early, not out of excitement but obligation, and as usual, she had been handed a task. "Claire, help with the drinks," her mother had said, without even looking up. And so here she was, quietly arranging champagne flutes as her sister twirled across the yard in a designer dress, diamond ring glittering like a weapon. Vanessa loved the spotlight. She craved it. She lived for the applause. And Claire? She was the shadow, the easy one, the quiet one. To her family, that was all she would ever be. The moment Vanessa and her fiancé arrived in their black BMW, the energy shifted. Guests turned, smiles widened, the applause rippled like a wave. Vanessa stepped out first, radiant, throwing her hand in the air to show off her ring. "Can you believe it?" she shouted to no one in particular. "Daniel proposed in Paris. At sunset." Everyone leaned in, cooing and gasping, just as Vanessa intended. Claire, standing off to the side with a tray of glasses, felt invisible. She had grown used to that, but tonight would be different. She didn't know it yet, but the moment was already circling closer, the moment when silence would no longer be possible. Vanessa pulled Daniel forward, parading him like a prize. He was handsome in a way that carried weight, polished suit, calm smile, the kind of man who seemed built for boardrooms and deals. "This is Daniel Hayes," Vanessa announced loudly. "Youngest partner at his law firm. Brilliant. Unstoppable." She paused just long enough to let her mother beam with pride. Claire balanced the tray in her hands, heart steady but restless. Daniel's eyes flickered across the crowd, polite, searching, and when they landed on her, they lingered. Claire noticed the way his brow furrowed, as though she was a puzzle he couldn't quite place. "Claire!" Vanessa's voice was sharp with a sugary edge. She pulled her sister closer. "Everyone, this is my little sister. She works at the courthouse." A pause, followed by a smile dipped in poison. "She probably files Daniel's paperwork." Laughter followed, light and harmless on the surface, but Claire felt the sting like glass under the skin. She had heard it all before. The courthouse girl, the assistant, the one who shuffled papers. She set the tray down on the table and folded her hands in front of her, her silence pressed against her teeth like a secret ready to break free. Daniel tilted his head, slightly, studying her. "The courthouse?" he asked carefully. Vanessa looped her arm through his and laughed. "Yes, clerical stuff. Answering phones, maybe typing memos. We can't all be lawyers, right?" She delivered it like a joke, but no one missed the bite. Claire lifted her glass, took a slow sip, and said nothing. Sophie, her cousin, slid up beside her, whispering into her ear, "He doesn't recognize you, does he?" Claire shook her head, her eyes never leaving Daniel's. "Not yet," she murmured. It wasn't new. This was the role her family carved for her long ago. Claire, the dependable one, the filler, the one who never asked for more. At Thanksgiving dinners, she was the sister who worked at the courthouse, a phrase tossed around until it lost meaning. "Still doing admin work, Claire?" Uncle James would ask, nodding as though encouraging her. She'd nod back, still at the courthouse, never correcting him, never showing them the truth. Because what was the point? They had already decided who she was, and in their eyes, she would always be the quiet one. But the truth burned inside her. They didn't see the nights she stayed at the office until dawn, combing through evidence. They didn't see the courtroom battles where her voice carried steady over walls of doubt. They didn't see the headlines, the legal journals, the recognition she had earned. They didn't see her because they never wanted to. Claire was the invisible daughter, the background character in a family where Vanessa's brightness swallowed all else. And maybe, for a time, Claire let them. It was easier to let the lie settle like fog than to force anyone to look clearly. "Claire probably files Nathan's paperwork," Vanessa repeated, smirking. The table laughed again. Claire caught Daniel's eyes, and this time she saw something shift. His gaze sharpened, recognition flickering faintly. He leaned closer, his voice lower. "Wait, Claire Dawson, County Courthouse. Have we—" His words were cut short by the swell of voices, Vanessa dragging him away to another circle of admirers. Claire's heart pounded. He remembered something. He just hadn't placed it yet. But soon he would. Sophie touched her arm. "You're not going to keep quiet this time, are you?" Claire smiled faintly. "Depends on the question," she said softly. Across the yard, Vanessa's laughter rang out like silver bells. Claire turned toward the table, lifted her glass, and waited. She knew the moment was coming. She could almost hear the question forming, the one she had carried like a secret weapon for years. It happened just after dinner was served, when the lights glowed softer and the conversation hummed. Daniel leaned forward, his eyes steady on Claire. "What exactly do you do at the courthouse, Claire?" he asked. His voice was curious, not mocking, but weighted. The table went quiet. Vanessa smirked, ready to pounce. Claire set her glass down gently, her hand steady despite the storm inside her chest. She met his eyes, her voice calm and clear. "Judge," she said. The word cracked the air like thunder. The word judge did not just hang in the air, it reshaped the room. Forks hovered midair. Glasses froze inches from lips, and even the candles seemed to flicker harder in the silence. Vanessa's painted smile cracked like glass. "You're joking," she said, laughter forced, her voice trembling at the edges. "She's not joking," Daniel whispered, recognition dawning across his features like a tide pulling in memories. "I've stood in her courtroom." Claire kept her eyes steady, her posture unflinching. For the first time in years, she did not shrink into the background. She let the truth echo in their ears and settle into their bones. And as the silence thickened, Claire's mind pulled back to where it all began, the first step in a journey her family never cared to notice. Years earlier, she was nothing more than a clerk, sitting in the shadow of Judge Reynolds, shuffling papers no one believed she could understand. Her family had thought that was the peak, answering phones, typing notes. "Good honest work builds character," Uncle James had said with that oblivious smile. Claire had nodded, but at night, after long hours, she stayed behind in the courtroom, studying files when everyone else went home. Judge Reynolds had noticed. One evening, as the courthouse dimmed and only the hum of fluorescent lights remained, he paused at her desk. "Claire," he said gently, "why are you still here?" She looked up, cheeks flushed. "Because I want to understand it all. I don't just want to carry papers. I want to carry arguments." His eyes softened. "Then stop hiding in the shadows. Speak. Show them what you've got." Her chance came months later. A prosecutor froze in the middle of a hearing. Notes scattered, arguments tangled. Reynolds glanced at Claire, his expression unreadable, and in that silence she stood. Her voice shook at first, then steadied, laying out facts she had memorized, precedents she had studied in secret. The courtroom shifted, surprise flashing across faces. When she finished, Reynolds leaned back, a faint smile touching his lips. "You just did more for this case than half the room," he murmured afterward. From that day on, he stopped calling her assistant and started calling her counsel. She never told her family. They wouldn't have listened. Claire moved from clerking to the district attorney's office, trading paperwork for arguments that cut sharp as glass. 5 years, nearly 100 cases, each one layering brick upon brick of a reputation she had built with her own blood and grit. Her conviction rate soared, Her fairness was whispered about in courthouse halls. Defense attorneys dreaded her precision. Colleagues respected her relentless preparation. She came home exhausted but alive, her chest humming with purpose. Yet at family dinners, nothing changed. "Still at the courthouse?" her mother would ask vaguely. "Yes," Claire would answer, the lie rolling off her tongue like a second language. If she explained, their eyes would glaze over, their wine glasses would clink, and Vanessa's voice would rise again. So she stayed quiet, saving her victories for the people who actually listened. Then came the call that shifted everything. One crisp autumn morning, her office phone rang, and Judge Reynolds' familiar voice filled the line. "Claire," he said, his tone carrying the weight of history, "I'm retiring." She froze, pen caught midair. "Congratulations," she managed to say, though her chest tightened. He chuckled softly. "Not just that. I've recommended you as my successor." Silence flooded her. "Me," she whispered. "There's no one more qualified," he replied. "You've earned it, every piece of it." Claire sat back, breath caught in her throat, eyes stinging. She had spent years burying herself in work, invisible at home, underestimated by blood, but here she was seen. 3 weeks later, the day of her swearing-in arrived. The courtroom was dressed in dignity, flags gleaming, oak polished until it reflected light like a mirror. Lawyers she admired filled the benches. Colleagues pressed into the aisles. Reporters scribbled furiously. Claire stood steady, hand raised, oath on her lips, heart pounding with a rhythm that belonged only to her. Cameras flashed. Applause erupted when the ceremony ended. "Youngest judge appointed to the district in over 50 years," one headline would read. But in that room, beyond the applause and the history, one detail remained like a pinprick: her family's absence. Only Sophie, her cousin, sat in the front row, eyes wet with pride. After the ceremony, Sophie pulled her into a hug, her voice thick. "So, are you finally going to tell them?" Claire laughed, though it cracked in her chest. "What would be the point?" she asked softly. Sophie shook her head. "Because you've earned the right to be seen, Claire. And sooner or later, they're going to have to look." Claire smiled, but her heart ached. She wanted to believe Sophie was right, but she knew her family. They saw only what fit their story, and she was not the hero in it. 2 years passed, each one heavier with silence. Claire presided over cases that tested every corner of her resolve. Corporate fraud, violent crime, even cases that brushed against political power. She built rulings that held weight, sentences that drew headlines, decisions that made even seasoned attorneys pause. Yet, at Sunday dinners, the script never changed. "Claire works at the courthouse," Vanessa would say dismissively. "She probably files memos." Laughter would follow. Claire would sip her wine, help clear the plates, and leave quietly. Inside, she clenched against the erasure, telling herself it didn't matter. But it did. Every time Vanessa spoke, it felt like being erased again, smudged out of her own story. What cut deeper was not the dismissal, but the indifference. Her mother's eyes would light up when Vanessa bragged about leading campaigns for million-dollar clients. Her father would refill Vanessa's glass with pride. But when Claire spoke, if she dared, her words floated into air that no one cared to breathe. "That's nice, dear," her mother would say absently, turning back to Vanessa. So Claire learned silence, perfected it, wore it like armor. But in court, silence had no place. There, her voice thundered, her gavel commanded, and men like Daniel Hayes had stood before her, stripped of pretense, forced to listen. And so when Daniel finally asked that question at the engagement party, "What exactly do you do at the courthouse, Claire?" she knew it was not just him asking. It was every dismissal, every careless laugh, every time she had been reduced to a secretary in her own family's eyes. Her answer, that single word, "judge," was not just a revelation. It was a release. Years of silence shattered in a single syllable. And as the table gasped, as Vanessa's smile twisted into fury, Claire felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. She felt seen. The silence at the table stretched until it threatened to break the walls. Vanessa forced a laugh, high and sharp. "She's lying!" she snapped, eyes darting at Daniel, at their parents, at anyone who would give her a lifeline. "She has to be lying. She files papers, she—" Daniel cut her off, his voice low, firm. "She's not lying." His gaze stayed locked on Claire. "I've stood in her courtroom. Bradford Pharmaceuticals, wasn't it? That was you." Claire inclined her head, once, calm as stone. Her father's mouth opened and closed like he'd forgotten how to speak. "You're a judge?" he asked, voice shaking. "Since when?" 3 years, Claire answered evenly. Her mother's fork clinked against porcelain, hands trembling. Vanessa slammed her glass down, wine splattering. "This is my engagement party," she shrieked. "And you? Of course you. Found a way to make it about you." Claire didn't flinch. Her voice stayed steady, even as Vanessa's face turned red. "I didn't say a word until you mocked me. Until you dismissed me in front of your fiancé. Again." The table froze between them, eyes bouncing like a rally no one wanted to play. Sophie, bless her, finally spoke up. "I was at her swearing-in. It was in every legal publication. If you paid attention, you'd know. Uncle James, the one who once told her clerical work built character, swallowed hard." "Oh, God!" he muttered, staring at his hands. Even Grandma leaned forward, squeezed Claire's fingers and whispered, "I always knew you were meant for more." But Vanessa couldn't hear any of it. She shoved back from her chair, the scrape of metal against stone echoing. "You've ruined everything," she spat, eyes glassy with anger. Then she stormed inside, heels pounding the patio like punctuation marks. Daniel remained, caught in the center of the wreckage. He glanced between Claire and the doorway Vanessa had disappeared into. "You knew?" Claire asked him quietly. "No," he admitted, voice heavy. "I didn't connect Dawson to Judge Dawson until tonight." He hesitated, rubbing his temple. "But now I can't unsee it. The way she mocked you, her own sister. The need to belittle you, just to shine brighter." He looked broken, a man torn between loyalty and truth. Claire didn't move, didn't soften. "That's not my burden," she said simply. "It's yours." Daniel nodded slowly, guilt etched into his jaw, before following Vanessa inside. The guests shifted uneasily, murmurs rippling, but no one spoke directly to Claire. She sat still, calm, her truth finally out. For once, she didn't feel small. The next morning, her phone lit with 17 missed calls and dozens of texts. Cousins, uncles, even old family friends wanted to apologize, to marvel, to say they never knew. Her parents' messages were shorter, unsure, guilty. Vanessa's number stayed silent. Claire spent the day in quiet relief, though the edges of hollowness still tugged at her. Around noon, a knock sounded at her apartment door. When she opened it, Daniel stood there, tie loosened, eyes weary. "She doesn't know I'm here," he admitted. "May I come in?" She stepped aside, made coffee. He wandered her apartment, pausing at her framed law degree. "Columbia," he read aloud softly. "Impressive." She shrugged. "Vanessa went to NYU," she replied automatically, the reflex to defer still ingrained. He turned to her, eyes steady. "You were extraordinary in court," he said. "And last night, you showed restraint I can't stop thinking about." Claire wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. "Restraint," she said with a faint smile. "It felt like I finally let go of a boulder I'd been carrying for years." Daniel nodded, sinking into a chair. "I don't know if I can marry someone who tears down her own sister to feel worthy," he confessed. "I don't know who Vanessa is anymore." Claire met his eyes, unwavering. "That's for you to decide, not me." He left shortly after, leaving the faint scent of cologne and the heavier weight of truth behind. 2 days later, it wasn't Daniel who knocked, but Vanessa. No makeup, hair unkempt, her eyes swollen from tears. She stood in the doorway, small in a way Claire had never seen. "Can I come in?" she whispered. Claire hesitated, then stepped aside. They sat on the couch, silence pressing in like thick air. Finally, Vanessa broke it. "Why didn't you tell me?" Claire looked at her sister, really looked at her, and asked softly, "Would it have mattered?" Vanessa swallowed hard, tears sliding down. "I was supposed to be the successful one," she whispered, voice cracking. "You still can be," Claire replied gently, "but not by erasing me." Vanessa dropped her gaze, nodded slowly. "Nathan's thinking about postponing the wedding," she admitted, voice hollow. "I'm not here to blame you. I'm here because I think I lost myself in this version of me I created, and I don't know how to get back." Claire's heart twisted. For the first time in years, she heard honesty in her sister's voice. She reached out, took Vanessa's trembling hand. "Start by telling the truth," she said simply. Vanessa looked up, eyes brimming. "I am proud of you, Claire. I always have been, and maybe that scared me most." It wasn't a fix, not yet, but it was a start. And for the first time, Claire felt the weight of silence lift for good. Like and subscribe to my channel for more contents like this, and let us know where you are watching from under the comment section.